Hello, welcome, and thanks for joining me. As I sat down to do this video, 2020's got about a week left in it. And I've been thinking about things that I would like to carry over into 2021 and things that I would like to leave behind in 2021. Looks like, unfortunately, I'm going to have to carry over this mask for a while into 2021, but I do hope to leave it behind at some point in 2021. Another thing I'm going to carry over into 2021 is my Baby Yoda hat that my niece gifted me a couple of days ago for my birthday. And another thing I'm planning on carrying over into 2021 is my reading and adding to my Videoteca, my book chat library that I have on my channel. So yeah, I am looking forward to a productive and enjoyable reading year in 2021, but sort of an Auld Lang Syne moment for 2020. I thought it'd be kind of fun to review and just take a look at the books that I added to my Videoteca on my channel over the course of 2020. So I've got 34 of them. I'm going to see if I can run through these pretty fast. I will link to the chats, each of the chats below, so if you missed any of these over the course of a year, you can easily find any of them that you might be interested in watching or watching again if you want to. So I'll link to those down in the details below. So yeah, let's just kick it off. I'm going to show the thumbs for each of the videos. So I started off the year by reading Dashiell Hammett's The Glass Key. This was a work of hard-boiled detective fiction, and I just love this so much. I've got some more of this coming up in 2021, not Dashiell Hammett, but some other hard-boiled detective fiction. Then I read Art as Therapy. This is by Alain de Botton and John Armstrong. This book was a work of nonfiction. It's about art and how we engage with art and how art is presented in museums sometimes really stifles that emotional and spiritual connection that we can have to art. And so this book explores alternative ways of engaging with art, which I found just extremely fascinating. Then I read Severance by Ling Ma. This was a work of fiction all about Shin fever. It's a type of pandemic, but it's really a spiritual pandemic, really an allegory for sort of the spiritual sickness of our times. Enjoyed that too very much. Then I read The Life and Death of Great American Cities by Jane Jacobs. This was a work of nonfiction all about cities and what makes a good city. This book has really stuck with me. It really changed the way that I looked at cities. Then I read Dance, Dance, Dance by Haruki Murakami, continuing on that Sheep Man story that a couple of the other books that I've chatted about. You know, just can't go wrong. For me, I adore reading Murakami. I try to read at least one a year. So this was one I read earlier this year. Then I read Track Changes by Syed Koshua. So this is a story, another work of fiction. It's all about the choices that someone made early on in their life and how that really affected everything since then. It's got sort of the main character is Palestinian, and so there's also that aspect of that experience in this novel, and I enjoyed that too. Then I read Monday Starts on Saturday by Boris and Arkady Strugatsky. This is some Russian science fiction from the Soviet era. I've been reading through their novels over the last few years. I've got more of their stuff coming up. This is kind of a fantasy, all about scientific institutions of, with magic involved and miracles. It was just so much fun. I just love reading their works. Then I read Lost Knowledge of the Imagination by Gary Lockman. This was a work of nonfiction. This is about the imagination, sort of the unconscious realm of consciousness and how consciousness is sort of the theory that consciousness creates. Consciousness in the imagination in that sense, not imaginary, but imagination, creates reality. And so that was really interesting. Then I read The Letters of Peter and Abelard. This is Peter Abelard and, Letters of Peter and Heloise. Peter Abelard and Heloise, great love story from the Middle Ages, very tragic, really a window in time of the religion of the era, and their love was so strong, but yet conflicted. Let's just say that. I got a lot from that too. Enjoyed that. Then I read Last and First Men by Olaf Stapleton. This is a work of fiction. This is the second of his works that I read. Also read The Star Maker a few years ago. This is all about different species, human species, millions or hundreds of thousands of millions of years into the future. And so this was just really fascinating, sort of metaphysical type science fiction in a way. Then I read Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. This was a pandemic story, a super flu. This traveling troupe of musicians and actors travel through about 20 years after a super flu has killed off most of the population. Just love this book. So beautiful meditation on an apocalyptic type story. Then I read Death in Venice and Seven Other Stories by Thomas Mann, master of the short story form. Death in Venice, very famous. These were all, each one of these stories were a little unique, were, sort of standalone, but this was just a treat to read, especially the use of language alone was worth that read. Then I read Empires of the Silk Road by Christopher I. Beckwith, A History of Central Asia from Bronze Age to the Present. I love Central Asia and I love the Bronze Age. This Silk Road, so this was all about how we have this misconception about Central Asia. Like Central Asia, we think of it as just this huge geographic region that gets crossed over from east to west, but actually for centuries and centuries it radiated out to the periphery, not the peripheries crossing it necessarily. So it really shifted my perspective on the Silk Road and Central Asian history, so I enjoyed that a lot. Then I read Descent into Hell by Charles Williams. This was sort of some metaphysical fantasy, sort of theological, all about the Christian doctrine of shared love, like how you share each other's burdens. There was also a doppelganger in this book that was so creepy. But yeah, this was the first of the Charles Williams novels that I've read. I have another one planned for next year, so stay tuned for that. Then I read A Confederacy of Dunces by John Kennedy Toole. I've read this a couple of times previously. It's one of my favorite all-time novels. I still laugh out loud. I love this novel. Loved reading it again this year. It was, especially in the pandemic year when there was so much anxiety, this was a real treat. Then I read American Philosophy, A Love Story by John Kagg. This is a work of nonfiction, sort of part memoir, part history of American philosophy. And I got a lot from this too, sort of this look into especially the history of American philosophy part of it, although the memoir part was okay too. But I took a bunch from the bibliography of this book. I actually have one of the works mentioned in this book on my reading list for next year, the William James essays. So yeah, I got a lot from that too. Then I read Real Life from Brandon Taylor, by Brandon Taylor. Real Life, this is a work of fiction. It's all about a grad student, a gay grad student, and his sort of struggle to fit in. He's also an African American around mostly, white people, so he always feels like an outsider. This book went on to be nominated. It was one of the finalists, I believe, for the Booker Prize, so it went on to an award history there. Then I read Gods of Jade and Shadow by Silvia Moreno Garcia. This was a work of fantasy, sort of the Aztec gods come to life in the 1920s. So this was kind of a fun sort of adventure to go on with some of the Aztec gods down in Mexico. Then I read The Heart is a Lonely Hunter by Carson Mccullers. This work of fiction is considered a classic, and I can certainly see why. Oh, good Lord, it was good. I loved this so much. One of my favorite reads of the whole year for sure. Yeah, check out the video if you're interested to learn more about that. Then I read this poetry collection called A Sinking Ship is Still a Ship by Ariel Francisco. It's the only poetry collection that I chatted last year, and, I really liked it. So check that out if you're interested. Unusually for me, I read a political biography last year. I read this biography of Herbert Hoover. I had my reasons for doing that. This was a whopper of a book, over 700 pages, but I was way more engaged with this than I expected, so that was kind of a surprise for me. Then I read Narcissus and Goldman by Hermann Hesse. I've been working my way through the Hesse novels. I read at least one a year over the last few years. This one was really classic Hesse, artist type versus sort of a rational type guy. They're best friends, but yet they have different worldviews. They sort of complement each other and create a whole between the two of them. Then I read You Again by Deborah Jo Eimergut. This was a work of fiction all about a woman who sees her younger version of herself in the streets of New York City one day and then continues to come across her in various ways. This book really resonated with me and was also one of my favorite reads of the year. Then I read The Secret Teachers of the Western World by Gary Lachman. I read The Lost Knowledge of the Imagination that I've already mentioned. This was all about the sort of like, the undercurrent of Western thought, I think, is typically very rational, and this is an undercurrent of sort of an other ways of knowing. And again, I took so much for this. I put so many things on my want to read list based on this bibliography. So that book I'm still thinking about. Then I read Via Negativa by Daniel Hornsby. This is a work of fiction all about the Via Negativa, this idea of you take away everything and then you're left with the divine. So sort of like asceticism, right? Where you like maybe fast or you are silent. Anyway, this priest sort of has lost his faith and goes on a journey across the country. His car basically becomes a monk cell for him. He is accompanied by an injured wolf. So yeah, that was really good. Then I read some noir fiction, I'm calling it. This is Mildred Pierce by James M. Cain. Just love this so much. This has a very famous film adaptation. I have some more James M. Cain coming up in 2021. So stay tuned for that. Then this was, I read Less by Andrew Sean Greer. I wasn't expecting to like this, but I actually did. I had my reasons for reading it, and then I was just so surprised. So I wound up enjoying this a lot. Then I buddy read Perdido Street Station by China Mieville. I buddy read this with Mark over at Richardson Reads. Everyone who reads it must converse, and the Bookish Bryants, as well as Stephen at Fullbeard Lit, the blog Fullbeard Lit. It was a great experience. The book is wonderful. It's weird fiction, weird fantasy, and reading it with that group was just so enriching. So thanks, guys and gals. I enjoyed that so much. Then I read Dune by Frank Herbert. I decided to start reading through the 6 of the original Frank Herbert Dune, the Dune series. So the first novel of Dune, I just loved it. I am still reading through that series. I am now on book 4. Then following that, I read The Consolation of Philosophy by Boethius. This was a written in prison book, Boethius. This was from like the 5th century. He is in prison. He eventually is executed. It's a work of nonfiction. And he is visited by the Lady Philosophy, who consoles him in prison and sort of helps him through this extremely difficult time in his life. Then the next book I chatted was Dune Messiah, which is the second book in the Frank Herbert Dune series. So great. This is a great series. Dune Messiah is all about religion, messiahs, right? And how that can really, a messiah can just change a society, sometimes for good and sometimes for bad. Then I read Our Lady of the Flowers by Jean Genet. I didn't know what to expect from this. This was such a beautiful, beautiful poetic work. Although it pertains to some very vulgar things, criminals and lowlifes in Paris of the early 1940s, but just a beautiful, remarkable read. Then I chatted Children of Dune, book 3 of the Frank Herbert series, which sort of continues that saga, and I'm still enjoying that series so much. My next and last chat for 2020 is going to be That Wondrous Pattern, Essays on Poetry and Poets by Kathleen Raine. I should have a chat on this coming up fairly soon. I am almost finished with it, so this will probably be my last book chat added to my Videoteca in 2020. But there will be lots more coming in 2021. I want to stop and wish everybody a great holiday season and a very happy new year. Holding you all in light. Be kind to each other. Be good. And let's just make it a year next year like we've never seen. And peace to everybody.